On the last day of April, the Indian government announced they will be including caste data in the coming census. So will this be independent India's first caste census? Well, not really. Every census in independent India from 1951 to 2011 has published data on scheduled caste and scheduled tribes, but not on other castes. Before that, every census until 1931 had data on all castes. Now, as the Modi government moves to include caste enumeration along with the next census, it takes away the big talking point from the grand old party and other opposition leaders. Pushing for a caste census, Rahul Gandhi repeatedly brought up the socio-economic and caste census, or the SECC exercise that the Congress-led UPA-2 government conducted during its tenure. Well, SECC was conducted for the first time in 2011 since 1931 and was meant to count every Indian family both in rural and urban India and ask their economic status. This would have ideally allowed central and state authorities to come up with a range of indicators related to deprivation, analysis of which could be used by each authority to define a poor or deprived person. So what is this socio-economic caste census exercise which Rahul Gandhi has been talking about, and what happened to its finding? Let's find out. So first, let's talk about what is SECC exercise. So till now, it sounds like just another census exercise, right? But here comes the difference. SECC was specially meant to ask every person their caste so as to allow the government to re-evaluate which caste groups are economically worse off and which are in better condition. In fact, then the central government argued that the SECC had the potential to allow for mapping inequalities at the wider levels and in fact also at the wider range.
Now imagine the power of AI when we apply it to the caste census. You imagine what we will do with AI and what we will do with the social revolution in this country when we start to apply AI on the data that we get from the caste census.
Now let's talk about the entire exercise which began and what actually happened to its finding despite getting support from almost across the political spectrum. The talk of the exercise gathered steam in 2010 when the UPA government was caught off guard when its allies, the RJD and Samajwadi Party along with the JDU pushed for a caste headcount to be included in the 2011 census. Congress and the Bharatiya Janata Party, the main opposition at that time, didn't have a clear stance back then on the caste census issue, although some OBC leaders within both the parties supported it. The Home Ministry led by P. Chidambaram argued that adding caste questions to the census would lead to inaccurate results due to the logistical challenges. Despite this, the socialist parties in the Hindi heartland, which primarily rely on OBC voters, continue to demand a caste census. They also strongly oppose the Women's Reservation Bill in its form then. As they sought to revive their OBC politics, it made sense for these Hindi heartland parties to push for caste and community quotas within the Women's Reservation Bill. Under pressure, the government agreed to discuss the caste census in Parliament, although some ministers were still against it. Meanwhile, the Bharatiya Janata Party, aiming to broaden its support beyond Hindutva, and started to favor the idea of caste census. On May 6th and 7th in 2010, Parliament held elaborate discussions about this very issue. It showed the differences within the parties, but almost leaders who spoke, including some from the Bharatiya Janata Party, were in favor of caste census. This made the government rethink its position. But then came the complications. The Home Ministry, which was against a caste-based census, softened its stand and suggested that a caste head count could happen, but only after the census data is collected during the biometric phase when citizens are photographed, fingerprinted and have their irises scanned for the National Population Register. On May 27, 2010, the UPA government finally sent the hotly debated issue to the group of ministers led by then Finance Minister Pranab Mukherjee. The group of ministers were also split and decided to ask for input from all political parties. Most political parties, including the Bharatiya Janata Party, supported a caste-based headcount, By September, the decision to conduct a caste head count was actually made. In June 2011, the Ministry of Rural Development kicked off this very exercise. The study looked at the socio-economic status of nearly 25 crore rural and urban households, divided particularly in three parts, each managed by different authorities but coordinated by the Department of Rural Development. The Rural Development Ministry handled the census in rural areas, while the Ministry of Housing and Urban Poverty Alleviation oversaw the urban study. Overall, the caste census was managed by the Ministry of Home Affairs. The counting of households and data organization faced a lot of delays and missed deadlines, although the counting was wrapped up by the end of 2012. The data wasn't ready until late 2013 though. The provisional data came out around September-October 2013, but with elections approaching, it was decided to let the new government handle the release of this collated data. The UPA lost the elections in May 2014 and the Modi-led NDA took over. After stating that compiling the data would take a while, the Modi government released provisional data for rural India in July 2015 but held back on the caste data, claiming it wasn't finalized yet. By July 2016, the government informed the Lok Sabha that they had instructed the Office of the Registrar General and Census Commissioner to process the caste data and pass it on to the new expert group that would formed by the Ministry of Social Justice and Empowerment and the Ministry of Tribal Affairs to classify the caste tribe information which was collected during this very exercise. In March 2018, the government mentioned to the Lok Sabha that they found certain errors while processing the caste data. In fact, in August 2018, the government also told the Rajya Sabha that the processing of caste data was delayed due to some design issues during data collection. And in fact, they also said that the planned expert group had not yet been established. In fact, in response to a question in the Rajya Sabha, the Home Ministry stated that the raw caste data has been sent to the Ministry of Social Justice and Empowerment for sorting and categorization. According to the ministry, there are no plans to release the caste data at that given point. In fact, in September 2018, the government submitted an affidavit before the Supreme Court, effectively dismissing the idea of caste census, in fact explaining that excluding information about any other caste apart from SCs and STs from the census is a deliberate policy choice. Regarding the SECC, the affidavit pointed out to technical issues. In fact, they said that technical issues occurred while data collection, and in fact, it was identified that there were around 46 lakhs different castes. And in fact, it was argued by the centre that the number of castes cannot be this high. The centre mentioned that an analysis of the data revealed the caste enumeration was filed with errors and inaccuracies and it is not reliable. So now, whenever the next census takes place, what will India see? Big changes or more complications? Only time will tell.